Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to spend about the first half of the show talking about the Pacific theater of World War II. And we're going to start out with Lieutenant Commander Joseph Langdell, who died recently at the age of 100. Lieutenant Commander Langdell was the last surviving officer of the USS Arizona. On December 7, 1941, during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the USS Arizona was bombed. The ship eventually exploded and sank, and 1,177 officers and crewmen were killed. The ship could not be salvaged, and the wreck of the USS Arizona still lies at the bottom of Pearl Harbor today, and there's a memorial commemorating the dead. Ironically, the ship is still leaking oil from the explosion 74 years ago. Here's a description of the Japanese attack on the USS Arizona in the morning on the date of infamy.
Shiro's pilot, Lieutenant Matsumara, climbs, then turns to allow him to take photographs. The shot becomes one of the most famous images of the attack on Pearl Harbor. While the defenders are still reeling from the torpedo strikes, the Japanese unleash their most devastating weapon. Flying in precise formation, 10 high-level bombers target the USS Arizona. The Nakajima-type 97 bombers are equipped with 500-kilo armor-piercing bombs converted from battleship shells. To guarantee hits from high altitude, every plane has to keep tight formation and drop simultaneously. Using a small, white, rectangular flag, the lead bomber signals the formation to release their bombs. From a height of 3,190 meters, the bombs will take 26 seconds to reach the Arizona. 8:10 a.m. Disaster strikes. One bomb hits the deck of the USS Arizona just to the right of turret number 2, plunges through more than 12 centimeters of armored steel lining the deck to start an incredible explosive chain reaction in the guts of the Leviathan. 4 decks down, the bomb sets off a flash in a powder room which ignites 2 more explosive stores. The superheated gases from the explosion smash into the 33-centimeter armored wall of the front bulkhead and deflect upwards, causing a huge fireburst in front of turret number 1. As the erupting gases break through the decks, the remaining ammunition stores ignite. The result is a catastrophic explosion that tears the ship apart. The blast hits everyone on the ship. The explosion heaves the 30,500-ton USS Arizona out of the water. The fire is raging. The only hope of survival is to get off the ship and get onto the neighboring repair ship, USS Vestal. But they're 18 meters above the water, and the sea is aflame with burning oil.
Well, Lieutenant Commander Langdell was 27 years old that day, and he was one of 335 people who did survive the explosions and the sinking of the Arizona. For the rest of his life, he was involved in the USS Arizona Reunion Association, dedicated to the memory of those who died in the attack. And here he talks in very emotional terms about it.
When that first bomb went off, everybody died. 1,177 were killed. 335 survived. The greatest loss of life of any ship in the United States Navy. On the morning of December 7th, 1941, I was asleep in the bachelor's quarters on Ford Island, where all the battleships had anchored nearby. I heard a strange noise. It shouldn't have been on a Sunday morning. But I kept insisting, so we finally got up and looked out the window and saw the red balls of the Japanese airplanes. So then we knew that we were under attack. So we got dressed quickly and walked about 100 yards up to the ship. And then I saw some of my men from the ship who were waiting ashore. I went out and helped them come ashore. And then we took them down to the Naval Hospital and went back and got some more. Then about 10 days later, I was having breakfast in the bachelor's office quarters, and an officer came in and he says, "Is there an officer here from the Arizona?" But the only thing I could do was put my hand up, and he says, "After breakfast, Mr. Langdell, you go down to the dock. There'll be a motor whaleboat down there with 15 men, sheets and filler cases, and you go to the Arizona and take all the dead bodies off above the waterline." So that we did. It took 2 days to do it. I think about 30 years later, I went back up to Punch Bowl National Cemetery and looked at all those graves.
Lieutenant Commander Langdell's remains will eventually be interred beneath the waters of Pearl Harbor in the sunken wreckage of the USS Arizona. Any crew member assigned to the Arizona on December 7, 1941 can have his remains placed near the number 4 gun turret. Well, we're going to jump ahead about 2.5 years in the war now to June of 1944 and talk about Alexander Vraciu, who died recently at the age of 96, and he was one of America's top flying aces during the Second World War. Commander Vraciu joined the war out at DePauw University, and in 1943 he spent 5 months as a wingman to Medal of Honor recipient Butch O'Hare. Those of you from Chicago will know that Butch O'Hare is who O'Hare Airport is named after. O'Hare died in 1943, but Vraciu credits him with teaching him a lot of the tactical maneuvers that he used in the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, otherwise known as the Battle of the Philippine Sea, in June of 1944. As the United States advanced on the island of Japan, they had to take the islands in the Philippine Sea, including Saipan. If the United States could take those islands, they would effectively cut Japan off and isolate the country in preparation for a mainland invasion. It was at that point that the Japanese launched their preemptive attack in the Battle of the Philippine Sea in what became the greatest aircraft carrier battle in history. Here's a description of a little bit of that battle.
It is June 1944, and what had been a mere skeleton of American sea power only 2 years before is now an awesome force to reckon with. Carrier Task Force 58, backed by the battle fleet of Admiral Spruance, numbers 15 carriers, 7 battleships, 21 heavy and light cruisers, and 69 destroyers. U.S. planes outnumber the Japanese, nearly 2-1. The encounter is to be the last great one-on-one battle of aircraft carriers, and Japan's last chance to stem the tide of Allied victory in the Pacific. History refers to the engagement as the Battle of the Philippine Sea, but the American pilots will always remember it as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. By nightfall, the Japanese have lost 346 planes and 2 carriers. Osawa hastily withdraws. The following day, another carrier is sunk, and an additional loss of 65 planes. The Americans have lost altogether but 30 planes, and the loss of not a single surface ship. The dream of empire is doomed.
Well, this was the battle where the United States asserted their complete air superiority over the Japanese. As the report states, the Japanese planes were not only outnumbered, but the Japanese pilots were less experienced. They had lost most of their most experienced pilots earlier in the war. Americans had far more experienced pilots, such as Commander Vraciu, and in fact, the Americans' greatest danger was landing at night because they stayed out after sundown and they had trouble getting back to their aircraft carriers. During the battle, Commander Vraciu engaged an attacking Japanese air squadron 25 miles west of the USS Lexington and shot down 6 Japanese dive bombers in just 8 minutes with only 360 rounds of ammunition. He ended World War II as the Navy's 4th-ranking flying ace, with 19 enemy aircraft shot down in flight and 21 destroyed on the ground. In December of 1944, he was shot down over the Philippines, but he ultimately managed to make it to friendly territory. He was nominated for the Medal of Honor. He never won it, but he was awarded the Navy Cross. We're going to move out of the war now and on to golf and talk about Billy Casper, who died recently at the age of 83, one of the great golfers of the 1960s and 70s. In fact, probably the 4th best golfer of that era, behind only Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and Gary Player. You know you're behind those guys, you know you're not going to get your due. But Billy Casper is actually 7th on the list of all-time PGA tournaments won. Here's an ESPN report on Billy Casper.
The golf world has lost one of its finest champions and most important contributors with the passing of Billy Casper. During a career that spanned 3 different decades, the San Diego native collected 51 PGA Tour victories, which is 7th on the all-time list. Many of those came during the era of the Big Three, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and Gary Player, contributing to Casper's legacy as the game's most unheralded and underrated performer. Between 1965 and 1970, Casper won 27 PGA Tour events, 2 more than Nicklaus and 6 more than Palmer and Player combined during that stretch. He was also regarded as the best putter of his era, with many of those critical putts dropping at the biggest moments, leading to Casper's major championship victories at the 1959 and 1966 U.S. Opens and the 1970 Masters. Casper's rare achievements extended to the Ryder Cup. During his 8 appearances on the U.S. team, he collected 23.5 points, still the most in American team history, and he was the winning captain of the 1979 U.S. squad. Following his superb playing career, Casper made a successful foray into the design and development business by establishing Billy Casper Golf, the 2nd largest operator of golf courses in the U.S. A kind man with a joyful heart, Casper was equally impactful in making the lives of children a little bit better. He and his wife Shirley were the caretakers of a big, loving family, adopting many of their children through the years. And he remained active in charitable work benefiting kids in the San Diego area until his final days. William Earl Casper Jr. may have never received the accolades he deserved during one of the greatest careers in the game's history, but he never sought the attention, and he'll be remembered in that selfless way.
Well, the report said he was a great putter, and here Billy Casper discusses where he learned to putt.
There's several things that were very important in my putting stroke. One is that I believed in keeping the blade square to the intended line throughout the stroke. I found that the back of the left hand and the blade of the putter were one and the same, so what I did with the back of the left hand, I did with the face of the putter. And I could miss hit putts and they would still go in the hole because I had the blade of the club working through the ball. I started caddying at age 11 at the San Diego Country Club and always carried my putter with me. That's where I really developed my touch and feel. But when I got out on the tour, I wanted to keep that putter square to my intended line. I always putted distance rather than not like these young players putt today. I mean, they have a 4 or 5 foot putt, and if they don't put it in the hole and it lifts out, it goes through 4 or 5 feet by, and they scare me to death when I watch them on television.
We're going to close tonight with Stewart Stern, who died at the age of 92. He was the screenwriter for one of the seminal movies of the 1950s, Rebel Without a Cause. It was the first movie about juvenile delinquency that was set in suburban Southern California. All the post-war movies about juvenile delinquency before that had been set in New York City. And of course, it more or less introduced James Dean to a national audience, along with Natalie Wood and Sal Mineo. There were also existential and edible themes, and here's the trailer from the movie.
You know what kind of drunken brawls those parties turn into. It's no place for kids.
A minute ago, you said you didn't care if he drinks. He said a little drink.
You're tearing me apart!
What?
You say one thing, he says another, and everybody changes back again!
Girls don't love their father. Since when? Since I got to be 16?
Stop that!
I love you, Jim. I really mean it.
No, I don't want you to go to the police. There were other people. Why should you be the only one involved?
But I am involved! We are all involved! Mom, a kid was killed tonight! This is all going too fast for me.
You better give me something. You better give me something fast.
Jimmy, you're very young. A foolish decision now could wreck your whole life. In 10 years, you'll never know this even happened.
Dad, answer her.
Stand up!
You want to kill your own father?
Here's a famous knife fight scene with James Dean and Corey Allen. And among those looking on are Natalie Wood, Dennis Hopper, Nick Adams, and Sal Mineo.
You know something?
No, what?
You read too many comic books.
Well, he's real abstract. He's different.
That's right. That's right. I'm cute, too.
Is that meaning me? Is that meaning me? What? Chicken.
Yes. You shouldn't call me that. How about you? Are you always at ringside? No, I mean, what are you hanging around this Frank company for?
What?
I don't want any trouble. The blade game, huh, Buzz? I thought only punks fought with knives.
Who's fighting? I'm fighting. It's examination time, man. It's a crazy game. Yeah, somebody get him a knife. Jim? Hey, bro, give it to him.
No.
Come on, give him a knife. Pick it up.
I don't want any trouble.
Pick it up! Pick it up. Now, you understand the action. Now, there's no sticking. Crunch.
Just a little jabbing.
That's all. What's the matter? What's the matter? Well, what are you waiting on, Toreador? I thought you wanted a little action. Well, now, you crunch chicken. Now, you call me that. Oh, Toro.
Of course, a little while after that, Buzz gets his come down in the famous drag racing scene where he goes off the cliff in a fiery crash. Well, I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. And as a final tribute to Stewart Stern, the best song ever about a teenage rebel, it's The Crystals. It's really The Blossoms, led by Darlene Love. Hey, arranged by Phil Spector, the Wrecking Crew in the background. How can you do any better than that? Here's He's a Rebel.
He's a rebel.